People and purpose are key drivers of performance, but are most often overlooked. The reshaping of our society is demanding a more engaged workforce to achieve on all fronts. Yet, most organizations often don't know how. They are forced to rethink what they stand for, the stories they tell, and how they are articulating and living on their purpose. I'm your host, Michelle Roberts, and welcome to Purpose First. Learn how top business leaders think, act, and achieve more by turning businesses into movements, by putting people and purpose first. I am pleased to welcome Ryan Iwamoto, correct? Yes, president and co-founder of 24-Hour Home Care as my guest today. How are you, Ryan?
I'm doing great. Yeah, so the last name is actually with Japanese. The I's are pronounced as E's, just like Spanish. So Iwamoto, but you got it?
Yes, I did my research. Ryan co-founded 24-Hour Home Care with the following vision in mind: to create a company that is admired for its people, passion, and performance. The Los Angeles-based 24-Hour Home Care is an independent, non-medical home care provider with 20 locations spanning California, Arizona, and Texas. It employs over 10,000 caregivers and has been one of the fastest growing companies in the US for the past several years, according to Inc. magazine. He attributes his success to creating great interpersonal relationships, which has led to significant company growth and exclusive partnerships with organizations such as Uber, Grubhub, UCLA Health, Cedars-Sinai, Stanford Healthcare, the Department of Veterans Affairs, Kaiser Permanente, and Kaiser Permanente, and the American Red Cross. He was also named Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year in 2017. So Ryan, tell us, how did this all start?
Yeah, well, first of all, Michelle, thank you for having me. Glad to be a guest on this podcast and sharing my story and our company purpose, which I know is a theme for this podcast. But yeah, I guess I can just start from not really the beginning, but I'll start just in college. I think I was your traditional college kid that really had no idea what I was going to do after graduating. I studied sociology, which I loved, but it's one of those majors where everyone asks you the same question: what are you going to do after college? And I truly had no idea. A lot of my friends were going to be applying to law school, which is a really sexy career after college. You had people, going to be applying for business school as well, which, I had that in mind. Just didn't necessarily have the grades for graduate school, so kind of had a little bit of a hesitation with that. And then there was also another opportunity teaching English in Japan. And I'm Japanese by heritage, but I've never been there. So I thought that was a great opportunity to potentially go out there and work out there teaching English. I also love developing and coaching, and I've seen that within my own company now, but back then I enjoyed it too. But I applied for that position, didn't get the job. I think that was the first sort of experience of failure, big failure. Was really hoping to go and travel to Japan, but didn't get that, but that was okay. So I ended up coming back home to LA, and I had no idea what I wanted to do. And my mom gave me the advice of, hey, well, why don't you just find some work experience, work for a couple of years, and then maybe explore going to graduate school like business school. So I said, okay, that seems like a good plan. Didn't really have anything else much going for me at the time. So one of the first places I interviewed with was a company called Maxim Healthcare Services, and just loved the opportunity. I know with Maxim, I learned that obviously the senior population is growing. Every single day, 10,000 people turn 65 till about 2030. I think in the first time in the US history, age 60 and 65 and up demographic is going to outnumber 18 and under for the first time ever in our country's history. And that's going to happen in 2034, what they're projecting. And most people want to live at home, and most people are living longer. So all that made sense to the opportunity of working for this company called Maxim Healthcare Services and working with seniors. So I saw that lens. So I actually applied and I got the job, which was great. And so Maxim was focused more on the home health side of business, the skilled side of home care. But around the same time that I joined, they just launched their non-medical home care line, which is what we do now at 24 Hour Home Care. So again, learned a lot about the business. And then around that same time, I was having my own personal challenge, or my family and I were having the own personal challenge of finding care for my late grandmother. And I was in the industry, and I still had struggles finding care, a good caregiver.
Sure.
And I can only imagine for people that weren't in the industry and just didn't have that knowledge, how do you do that? Because every single person on this listening right now, just that lives on this planet, is going to find the challenge, or going to have to provide care themselves, or find the challenge of finding a caregiver for a loved one. It's just it's the inevitable. So that opportunity was there. So I saw it from a personal lens, and then from the professional lens. I got that from Maxim and learning the opportunity of all the seniors getting older and wanting to stay at home. So I think having those two different lenses really allowed me to, I guess, inspire me to say, hey, there's an opportunity here to create 24-hour home care. And at the time, there was a lot of small mom and pops in our industry, or franchises that were smaller but operated like mom and pops. And then on the other side of the spectrum, there was these large nationwide home health companies that also did home care, which was Maxim. There was really nothing in between. So we also found an opportunity to say, hey, we can create that company that's not your mom and pop, but also not your big, large nationwide home health company, and combine the professionalism of the nationwide company, but the personalization of a small business into a home care company. And that's where 24-hour home care started.
Yeah. So it sounds like you have a personal connection to home care itself, and you found that there's a market opportunity that, that wasn't currently out there. So you started the company, and what made you decide that, there's a mission there, and how do you bring light to what your mission was and purpose?
Well, I got to be completely honest, Michelle. When we started the company, we didn't really have your traditional mission or purpose or why or core values. As a startup company, you see an opportunity. We lived and breathed it, right? Doing it at Maxim, and we just sort of pushed forward. And it was me, it was my co-partner, David Allerby. And we were just pushing forward and really didn't take the time to say, hey, let's put together all the core values and the mission statement. It wasn't until about 6 years later that we actually sat down and said, hey, we should put pen to paper and come up with a mission statement, because hey, most companies have a mission statement if you go on their website, but we didn't have that. We just knew where the opportunity was. And really it was about providing a great service that was much, much needed. It was about working hard, and it was about getting, stuff done and having fun while doing it. And that really was what carried us through the first, I guess you can say, 6 years. And the people around us, the employees that we hired, we didn't necessarily need to put it on a wall or, put it pen to paper, because they saw it from us and they knew it, what our mission and our purpose was. Again, we didn't have it in writing, but they knew and they felt it. But what happens is, as you get bigger and bigger and bigger, and you have now, instead of 1 degree of separation from people working with you, now you have 2 or 3 degrees of separation. They don't see it from you. Right. So that's why it's important to really start ingraining it within your culture, within your teams, and start putting things down, pen and paper, and living and breathing it. Because if you don't have exposure on an everyday basis to your employees, you're going to need to have something for them to look towards and see what your purpose and your why is.
So if I'm understanding correctly, you're saying that you got to a point where you grew so big that separation was growing, and you needed some way to bring alignment and a way to bring everyone together so that you're all knowing and moving in the same direction and you're all talking about the same thing, no matter how many degrees apart you are.
100%. Because as we started to grow and scale, and that's why, we started doing that six years later, our from the co-founders perspective, we knew what we were doing. We were very passionate about what we're doing. And then our direct reports saw that as well. So they were very bought into that passion. But then you start going a few degrees, as I talked about, and you lose some of that. It's like the game of telephone, right? You lose that message as you continue to tell it. And once it got to people on the front lines, they didn't see the same things that we saw. And that's where you had that misalignment. And it's one of the reasons why we said, hey, we need to sit down. 2014, we came together and we created our core values. We created our mission statement and we created our vision. And even from that day, that's changed over, the next, 7 years? That's changed as well and evolved too as the company has grown. But 2014 was when we actually sat down and did it. And one of the things that we actually really took pride in is we got input from all of our employees to create our mission and our core values. So what we did was we surveyed them and said, hey, we understand we don't have any core values here, but we obviously know there's things that we live by and people can describe the company in certain ways, but we really wanted to capture that and put that, in a statement or on our website or on the wall. So we surveyed them, hey, what are some adjectives that describe 24-hour home care and the culture? And then we took all of those different adjectives and saw what was any trends in those words. And we saw a few things that started sticking out: trust, teamwork, accountability, communication, hard work. Those were the central themes that we were seeing, and those became our core values.
That's excellent that you brought the team into the discovery and articulation of what is it that we want to stand for. That's awesome. And I'm just curious, if that was 2014, how much has that evolved and how often do you go back to those and relook at them and revise?
It's evolved. So those core values don't even exist anymore as of actually this year, because what we then saw from the core values was, okay, these are words, right? They're words that I think people can get behind, but the definition of each word was a little bit different from everyone in the company, right? Because they're very general terms. So then the next step was, okay, well, how do we really capture this in our company culture, right? If people were to describe the company culture, how would they describe it, right? And we saw that there wasn't really alignment across the board. So one of the other factors that we created during this time was also creating our motto. And this really is, I would say, the best description of our culture. And that motto is care and compete. So you have to do both. We are a for-profit, but mission-driven company. And you need to have both of those two elements to, I guess you would say, if you look at any individual in our company, they have those two elements. So we like to say care and compete are the two threads that are interwoven that make the fabric of 24 hours culture. And then from that, and this actually happened in 2021, just with everything going on with the pandemic, we look to elevate those core values. And now we turn them into what we call our care and compete principles. So instead of the 5 core values, we now have our 5 care and compete principles. And those are, I'll go over it with you. We just launched them. So this is kind of a first public offering of the care and compete principles. But number 1 is we care. All right. And it's in our name, it's what we do. And you got to have an element of that, right? You just got to care about people. You got to care about the clients. You got to care about the caregivers. You got to care about the community. And also one thing we added into that is you got to care about yourself. And especially in this time of a pandemic, people are quarantined in their homes. You got to take care of yourself first. It's almost like when you get on the airplane, before you put the oxygen on someone else, you got to put it on yourself first. Yeah. So we felt that was an important piece to add into We Care. The second one is performance matters. And this goes along with the compete side of it, is that as a growing company, you have to have the results, right? They got to follow, and you can't grow and you can't be successful unless you have the performance there. So we really want to emphasize that yes, we care, but we also have to perform as well. So performance matters, number two. Number three is own it with courage. And what this means to us is whether it's taking on responsibilities, whether it's owning up to failure that you may have done, or having the courage and owning it to give feedback to a colleague or to your supervisor or to a direct report that might be constructive, right? Sometimes people will be a little bit hesitant to doing that. We want everyone to own it with courage. Number four is improve always. This one I really resonate with, and that's this whole theme of continuous improvement, just within the company, within yourself as an individual. It's something that we want permeating throughout the whole company culture. And then number five, and this sort of sums everything up, but if we do all those four different principles, if we live by those four principles, the fifth one is win together. And the only way we're going to be able to be successful as an organization is if we do it together and we all work together versus being in these different silos. So that one sort of wraps up all of our principles in one by winning together. But yeah, that just evolved from the core values into the principles this year. And we're excited to roll that out. We're seeing a lot of our people really resonating with it because it just gives a little bit more color to just having these very generic 5 words.
Right. Right. And how does well, first, what is your purpose and how does that fit into either your scaling, your, internal alignment piece?
Yeah, good question. So I think I skipped that when you asked me the question, but yeah, so going back to the timeline. So in 2014, we created the core values, we created our mission statement, we created the care and compete motto. So we had that. And then not until 2016, so 8 years later, that we created our why, or you can call it the purpose. So our why is impacting people's lives by making a difference every day. Well, actually, let me take this back. We did create a why, but we just didn't really use it back in 2014. And it was more so being, to revolutionize the industry and impact people's lives. But we realized we're not trying to revolutionize anything. It's more so how do we make a difference every day? Because we do have that opportunity to do that on a day-to-day basis. And that could be whether it's impacting a client's life because we're providing care for them to live at home. It could be impacting a caregiver's life because you're providing them work to have means to an end. It could also be impacting your colleagues' life by helping them out or stepping up when they're down. So there's different elements that we can take out of the why. And it's been a very impactful message that we've been able to roll out with the company.
And how did you get there? Was there the same type of process of getting everyone's input and kind of going from there, or how did that evolve?
Yeah, we didn't do the survey like we did last time. It was more so, how do we get people, just as we started getting bigger and bigger and bigger, now we're in 3 states and, we had thousands of caregivers and, 200 plus employees working in the offices, working in all these different states too, is how do we get them bought in on what we're doing? Because you're not going to see me or David on a daily basis, right? So again, I think it's taking things that we felt people resonated with. So impacting people's lives, that's something that we do every single day. And how do we capture that? So that became a big part of it. And we started building off of that. And one of the cool things that came out of it is, how do you make this live and breathe every day? And we noticed that term making a difference really start to stand out. So one of the ways that we really kept it visible for all of our employees is we started creating what we call our difference makers. Every single month, we would nominate a difference maker, where a peer can nominate someone that has really lived the core values of care and compete, and can nominate them. And then on our monthly all hands, we would pick out a few that would be, I guess, what you call your difference makers of the month.
That's a great example of how to live the brand and live the purpose. I noticed when you talked about scaling up as well, is there any tactics that you put in place to sort of streamline the purpose when you did that?
Yeah, I think the number one thing is just keeping it visible with your organization. And there's a few ways you can take visible. I think one, Yes, people always say, oh, well, you just can't put it on the wall and make things work, right? But I think you still need to put things on the wall. You need to have items where they can continuously see, uh, whatever it is, your why, your purpose, your mission statement. So, we put things on the wall. Now that we're in this virtual remote environment, we send a lot of, different swag items that have our purpose living on the items. But then also visibly too, it should live in all the things that you're doing. So, I mentioned our monthly all hands that we do. So now it's on Zoom, but we always start our presentation by what is our why? We have someone reading it. And then I also mentioned we end it by announcing the difference makers of the year. And again, that also keeps it going. And then throughout, we're very intentional about pointing out different things that resonates with our care and compete principle. So if we see an example of someone owning it with courage, we're very deliberate of saying, hey, this person did an awesome job living up to our care and compete principle of owning with courage. And this is what that person did. So that's another way of really keeping it visible. One of the things I also was inspired by the Ritz Carlton is, they have their whole ladies and gentlemen mantra, and they
serving ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah. Yep. And so what they do is they have their principles and they put it on their card and they keep it in their wallet. And that's something too, especially in this remote environment where, okay, you're not going to see it on the walls anymore. That's one area where you can really keep it visible. So we want to keep that in place. And then the last thing is, if there's any like annual review or mid-year review or your one-on-ones that you're having with your employees, bring that up as a topic. How are they living through these core value or these principles or the why? On a scale of 1 to 10, what does that look like? Okay, well, what's in the gap? How do we continue to live that? So I think just keeping it visible, whether it's on the wall, in your presentations, in your messaging, in your swag, and in your dialogue with your employees, that's going to be the best way to do it.
Absolutely, 100%. And I value everything that you just said. I try and push my clients to build all of their purpose and their ideas into their processes and systems, just like you exhibited right there.
So, and I'll share one more example, Michelle, because this is really fresh on my mind because I just had a call with my coach. So my coach used to be the former CEO of Cold Stones. His name's Sheldon Harris. And we just had a conversation about this. And he talked about as Cold Stones, the ice cream store, was starting to scale, right? Going from like just a few stores to now 400 or 500 stores across the country. One of the questions that he would always get in those interviews that we'd have for hiring talent would be, Sheldon, hey, what are you going to do in your role to maintain this culture of Cold Stones as they start to scale? And his response, which I love, was this. He said, this is more up to you than it is to me. And what he means by that is that, if he brought you on as someone on the Cold Stone team, the expectation is not to be a consumer of the culture, but be a co-creator of the culture and how it evolves as it moves forward, right? And if that person didn't align with that, probably wasn't the right person for the job, right? So he always wanted to bring people that wanted to be influencers within the culture to help continue it to grow, because that culture is going to be a lot different from the past to where it is today. And you want people to be continuously improving it as you go on and scale.
Yeah, and evolve with the brand itself, because it's all about the purpose and the people, working together and creating something bigger than the business itself. So based on your experience in implementing this purpose into this various processes and systems that you've been able to do, what are 3 outcomes that have come out of that you've noticed in the business as a whole, the organization, the people maybe? Like, how has that contributed to the success in a way?
Well, I think number one, people are just more aligned in exactly what we need to do. I guess you can say my purpose as a leader is to really create a clear path of where we're going and how we're going to do it. And if you don't have the why behind it, it's really hard to do that. And then number 2, it's especially in those tough times of business. Business, you're going to have challenges, right? That's the whole reason we start businesses, because there's usually problem that you're trying to solve, but you're going to have those challenges. And really, it's your why that's going to help you get through what you do. One example I'll share is this is another tactical way of keeping the why visible for individuals. So we did the company why and really got that ingrained, and people could say it off of, you can call on somebody and they'll recite it perfectly. So they did that well. But I think what we noticed is that from an individual standpoint, people just weren't necessarily tied to it. So in 2019, a year later, we really focused on how do we create or really bring out the why in individuals to do what they do at 24-hour home care. So what is your personal why? So one of the things that we've done, and I'll share this since we're doing this on video for the people that can see it, is we created these frames, and it has your why in your frame. So you can put whatever it is, what it's a person or family, or a certain individual. So me, I put my grandmother, my late grandmother, but she was obviously the big reason why we started 24-hour home care. So when those times get tough, I take one look at her, and that just really helps me understand why I'm doing what I'm doing, and it helps me take a step back from, the day-to-day challenges that I'm facing and say, hey, remember what you're doing. And I think as a business owner, you need to have that why as you go through it. And it might not be written down on paper, but you have to know internally what your why is, because you're not going to be able to survive if you're just doing it because it's a job, or it's something that it's an opportunity that you see. It's going to get really tough, and if you don't have that why, it's not going to keep on going for you.
Yeah. So that's a great example. Another great example of really putting people first too. I mean, knowing, understanding that we're here for a bigger purpose. Yes, but we're also here for your individual purpose as a person. And we're giving light to that. And so many companies, they're just so company focused and success focused that they fail to really look at their people and their individual passions, individual purpose. So congrats to you on recognizing that and helping implement something that looks be there.
Hey, Michelle, I realized I didn't give a number 3, but I'll give as a number 3, I'll give an example of another way that you can leverage your own employees to help you do this. So when we rolled it out, we acknowledged we had a challenge of connecting the person's individual why with the company why. So what we did, we had an annual conference that we did, and we did this whole Shark Tank type session where we had we broke everyone up into groups, and we challenged them on, hey, help us with this. How do we tie people's individual why with the company why? And we had them present out to me, David, and our CFO, CEO, Jackie Davis. And it was great. We had a lot of great ideas, but we only picked one winner, and we actually implemented their idea. So the idea was, and this is something anyone could do, any company can do, was similar to what you see on those like challenges on Instagram or Facebook or TikTok, especially the ones that are aligned with a cause. So they did what we call the Why Wednesdays. So what that was that they would film themselves like a selfie video and share what their personal why was.
Cool.
And then they would spend some time talking about very emotional videos, and a lot of people shared things that no one knew. And so it was really touching videos. And at the end, they would nominate a colleague outside of their department to do the next Why Wednesday. So then we incorporated that into our all hands, because we did our all hands on Wednesday. So every single all hands, we had 2 individuals that shared their why through a selfie video. And then at the end, they would nominate 2 more. So the following month, that person would go. So we've been doing that every single month for the last 2 years. And the videos have been great, and really just humanizes everything that we do. It humanizes the individual as well, because we're learning so much, and that inspires me. And I know this inspires the other people. When they hear what your why is, it just makes you want to try that much harder to obviously make sure that they're fulfilling their why too. So that was a great way and idea that didn't come from the top, came from the teams to really ingrain the why within the individuals.
Yeah, great example. Really great example. I'm curious as to, this whole, how has COVID, has it presented new ways for you to live purpose as a company, and what are those ways?
Yeah, no. So COVID was definitely a very unique time for all of us, right? It doesn't, no matter what type of industry you do, people were affected in many different ways. But I think for us, one of the beneficial things for us is that we had an opportunity to be a part of the solution to help our communities, right? We all knew the safest place for an individual was at their home, and if they can have someone take care of them, that's a family member that lives with them, that's the best. That's the most safe way to do it. But not everyone has that luxury. So, what's the next best option? Well, it's to be in their home with a caregiver that can help. And we had that fortunate luxury. It's not even a luxury, but it's an opportunity to be able to provide that at a bigger scale. So, yeah, we shifted gears, and our messaging to our to everyone, whether it's our clients or caregivers, it went from our traditional messaging of, hey, here are all the ways we can be more convenient for you, to now, how can we provide you with safety and comfort, relieve your anxiety that you have right now. And I remember talking to my field staff team, which still going out in the field, still meeting with clients, still going to the hospitals to help them with their patients. And I literally said to them, hey, RY is impacting people's lives by making a difference every day. But in these times, we are not just impacting lives, we are saving them. And just the how that resonated with the team, I just remember just seeing people's faces, and you just see this sense of passion and fulfillment, and hey, I have a job to do, and I have a job that's bigger than providing home care. It's really providing the service that can help our community and help the country
Yeah.
survive this thing. And it was very impactful. So I can tell you, if we didn't have our why that we can align on, this would have been a lot harder to do, just to have people that would step up and step in to help solve this.
Right. And I'm sure there was, at some point it was probably very challenging, because it was like, well, how can you help people if you're, a possible, there had to be some challenges around that, and sending people out versus having them, do you want to take on new clients? Do you not at that time? And how did you navigate that? Because I think there's some really great innovation that you've done around that. We did that.
Yeah. So, our just to be quite transparent, our business probably went down in a matter of a few weeks about 30%. And I was just, frankly, people didn't want people in their homes, which I totally get. Right. And, just I've never seen our, I guess you can say, numbers drop. The number of hours that we provided just continuously drop for, the next 2-3 months. There's two ways you can look at it. One, you could say, oh, woe is me. Like, this is how it's going to end. Or how can we take this and use this as an opportunity to rise above it and find other ways that we can help the community? So, yeah, there's some different partnerships that came out of it. We partnered with, you mentioned in the beginning, Grubhub. We knew that a lot of our seniors that we're working with were still isolated. Maybe they didn't have help from us anymore, but they still needed access to food and groceries. So we found an opportunity to partner with Grubhub to help manage food deliveries for our seniors. So instead of having to, have a smartphone, and most seniors may not have that, and order on Grubhub, they can simply call us on the phone. We can put in the order for them, and they can get food delivered to them. So it just made that experience that much easier through them. And then we didn't charge anything addition to that. There was no delivery fee for us, and Grubhub actually was great partners and actually gave a discount for our clients or anybody that uses service. So actually, it was cheaper to go through us than actually go through the app, which was appreciated Grubhub doing that. So that was a partnership. And then also too, with the hospitals, they are typically the biggest referral sources for us, just even before COVID-19. But when you had the hospitals calling us up, emailing us saying, hey, we need your help. We need to get these patients out because the beds were getting full with COVID-19 patients. It was an opportunity for us to say, how can we make this work? And we ended up developing programs that are still going on today to help transition these patients from hospital to home in a safe environment quicker than usual. So again, it's about finding different ways to, how do you find opportunities in the challenges? And this was an opportunity to help our communities.
Wow, congratulations. That takes dedication and quick thinking and innovation. So I really appreciate you sharing that story. I think other people will be able to be inspired by it.
And I'll share one thing too that might help, and this also applies to people looking to create their why and their purpose. Is that more is lost in indecision than the wrong decision, and that was something I learned very just in the height of COVID-19. There was so much information out there. Some of it was not even incorrect information, and as a leader, you always want to make the right decision. That's just ingrained in what we do, right? I want to have the right decision and make the right decisions for my team. Right. But you can also be plagued with you want to make the right decision so bad that you don't take any decision. Yeah. So what I learned with COVID-19 is you might not even have the right decision, but it's important to act on it, right? Take some of the information. You might not need 100%, but take some of that information and take some small steps forward, right? Incremental steps, assess how you're doing, analyze it, and maybe it's not the right decision. You can pull back and learn from it and then move it in a different direction. Or maybe you are going on the right path and you're moving forward. And as you're looking to develop your why or your purpose, don't spend a lot of time trying to think about it and spend 2 to 3 years to put it together. Take a few steps forward and see if that works or not and continue to move forward. It's only a failure if you don't learn from the failure. Right. So if you're
light either. The light.
Exactly. Right. So if you can learn from it and you're not failing from it, you're improving from it, I see it as a win-win, even if it's the wrong decision. So I think that's super important about it, because it can be very challenging, especially if you're 8 years into a company saying, oh man, we need a why, we need a purpose, we need core values. Just take some small steps, put some things down on paper, run with it, because you can always change it along the way, right?
Yes, or hire someone like me who can help.
Or hire somebody that can help you. Yeah, exactly.
And you know what? It's great. It's really refreshing to hear too. And you kind of alluded into the question that I was going to ask next was, so many companies, they create it and then it's really challenging. I find that part of the work I do is more challenging with companies because there's a lot of extra work after you actually create the purpose. What was it that, in your experience, what was it that said, okay, here's what we've created, now how do we live it? What was that transition like, and what made you decide, no matter what, we're going to see this thing through and create behaviors and, processes around this idea?
Yeah. Well, I think a good phrase that sums this up is progress over perfection. We're 3 years into our new why, and we're 3 months into our new care and compete principles, and it's not perfect. People don't always know it, right? People may not even live by it yet, but I think it's just understanding this is all about progress and how can you take, again, a few steps forward to make this work. Just some tips. We talked about keeping it visible, so I shared that. Yes. But also, I would highly encourage you, especially as leaders, is to get other champions on board to help get this out to their teams, right? And it could be your department heads. It can be certain individuals where you identify, hey, they're really bought into the culture and you can see them just beaming with it. Bring them on. Create tiger teams. We have a whole culture tiger team that represents different departments, and they're always giving feedback and ideas and how to continuously improve it too. Because if you don't have those champions, you don't have your department heads bought in and thinking about how do we continuously improve it, because that's another thing as well, is you can roll it out, but if you want to continue to evolve, the culture's got to evolve as well. You got to have people that are looking to be co-creators of the culture and not just live and breathe it. So I think that's another important piece of it.
That's a great point as well. And as far as these overall success that you've seen due to defining your purpose, what are some examples that you could give that you've seen firsthand?
Yeah, well, I think it's when you start to see some of the nomination for us with the difference makers, and you see people nominating their peers, identifying certain core values that they're living, it's amazing. I mean, we get flooded with these nominations and we have to, condense it into maybe picking three or four. But I think when you're seeing that at a mass scale of people identifying, people living and breathing this, it's pretty cool to see. And I think that's where we got something good here. And especially when we have times of challenge or struggle, and you have people looking to these principles to guide them through it. COVID-19 being one of them. Another one is actually just last week, we unfortunately lost a team member in a car accident. And just seeing, it was a horrific tragedy that happened. But we've seen the team come together and seeing the really rallying around the whole principle of we care. It was really amazing to see, and just seeing some of the donations and the words that have been presented out just on that former colleague of ours. It was really, really cool to see. It was bigger than 24-hour home care when you see that stuff.
Wow, that's amazing. Very inspirational, I'm sure. And so sorry to hear about your team.
Yeah, well, and another thing that just really blew me away was one of the divisions. They hit their what we call our stretch goal. So they all get these large bonuses for hitting their stretch goal. And as a collective team, we're talking hundreds and hundreds of dollars individually that they're going to receive. They forego that bonus to donate it to the memorial fund of our colleague, which, I mean, it doesn't get much more than that, where you say, hey, I care about my team member there.
Wow. That's amazing. There's always a question that comes up with purpose.
Yeah.
And relating it to bottom line. It's always a tricky one. I'm curious if you have anything around that you'd maybe be able to share that you've noticed with the purpose, putting people on purpose first, and how it's impacted the bottom line.
Yeah, I mean, we've grown every single year. So I think that at the end of the day, we've been growing. So I think we're doing something right. But, we do other things like engagement scores with our employees, and, we're not always perfect. And sometimes you see it go up and down. But generally speaking, it's about taking that feedback and learning from it and see how we can improve. Because we may do a really good job in one area, maybe training, we're just kicking butt, but then there's certain other areas like communication or accountability, we're just not doing well. So I think it's taking that feedback and learning from it, and just understand that this is always going to be something that's going to be more of a progress thing than something that's going to be a perfect science. And if you can goal it with things, whether it's a score or your revenue or your bottom line, even better. But it's hard to say, because you can feel it. You can feel when people are engaged, when people are bought into what we're doing as a company. And that is a very, very powerful force for you as a business. You can also feel it the other way too, when people aren't feeling it. And I think generally speaking, you do well, and this is probably not the most scientific way to say it, but when that powerful force is feeling good, you are going to be doing well. And we've seen that happen.
Yep. What advice would you give a business leader that wants to take their organization to the next level when it comes to putting their people and purpose first?
Yeah, I would say get your teams involved as much as possible. Whether it's the culture, we call them the culture gurus, but we have a whole tiger team of culture people. All of our department heads live and breathe it. We keep things very visible across everything. So all of our materials, you'll find our why somewhere on the deck, right? So it just doesn't live with our employee or internally. It also lives externally as well with our customers and our caregivers and our clients. So I really do think it's just a combination of living and breathing it, keeping it visible, and having it part ingrained within your systems of working.
Yep. And I just want to say it's been such a pleasure to talk with you, in hearing all of the right things you're doing to integrate and align purpose and people. I knew when I heard you on another podcast, I was like, oh, I got to meet him. I got to have him on my show. So tell me, how can people come to follow you and your journey?
Yeah. I mean, I'm on most of the social media platforms, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook. I can give you, since we're on audio right now, I can give you those handles for that. Our company is at www.24hrcares.com. You can also find us again on LinkedIn, Instagram to follow us. And actually, I would say I would recommend our Instagram does a really good job of capturing our culture. One of the feedbacks, actually, I'll share a quick story. When we were starting our company, we had a website, but the website was very generic. You saw nothing but stock photos. This was back in the day. And no one really knew when they were interviewing with us, like, okay, we didn't really see the culture, right? You can see it on the website. So we were very intentional about making our social media into a window that can see into our company culture. So Facebook, not so much anymore. It's more articles, but our Instagram does a really good job of capturing our company culture.
Awesome. I'll be sure to check that out as well.